knowing that things exist, I think is a core skill in technology. Well, nobody's an
Right.
expert at everything, but if you need to do it, learning it on the fly when it becomes necessary, I think this is a skill today.
Welcome to the podcast Web Stories with Sachin, Season 1, Episode 5. I'm Sachin, your host, who is also a web and an app developer these days. I've been in this field for about 3 years now and I love talking to the experts. Today's guest is Stefan Judis. Who is Stefan? Stefan is a Berlin-based web developer who has 15 years of experience in this field. He's also a writer, speaker, and he's also passionate about how the web works. What he does, he is a creator of the famous Web Weekly newsletter, which has more than 6,000 plus subscribers, where he talks about the web fundamentals that includes browser APIs, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and performance. He have also spoken in many conferences and he's also a Microsoft MVP and a Google developer expert. What makes him different? He doesn't chase trends, he digs deep into web fundamentals most developers ignore. Today, we will talk about his journey, newsletter workflow, developer advice, and where the web is going. Stefan, thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Are you ready?
That's quite an intro. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited. Let's have a chat about newsletters, the web. Let's get rolling.
Sure. First round is your personal journey. So what was your turning point to switch careers from sound engineer to web development?
So I grew up in a tiny city in the north of Germany, and I came to Berlin to become a sound engineer. And that was pretty much working well for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. But then I hit a wall. So I was mixing TV shows, sports shows for the German television, which when you think of it, is actually quite cool, right? So I was a person sitting in front of this huge mixer. At the beginning of my 20s, I was rather young, and then doing live television. But it became rather boring, to be honest. Every working day was the same. I was just pushing some faders. There was nothing new to learn. And I really felt like, do you want to do that the next 20, 30, 40 years? Because it's the same thing every day. And I was like, okay, that's not going to work. And then I more or less accidentally started studying computer science, not because I was a computer nerd, but I thought, well, you're good with computers. You're not like exceptionally well done with programming and all these things, but you're good with computers. So then I started studying computer science, and it took me 2 semesters, but then I was like, holy moly, this is cool. So first of all, it's like you can build things, and it's like solving puzzles all the time, and there's never an end to what you can learn. And this is when I switched journeys, and I'm still in love with programming and kind of solving puzzles because it's never boring.
Awesome. But was it the C++ Java story, and when did you eventually come to the HTML thing?
Yeah. So of course it was, we started with Java, and yeah, I mean, typical university courses, a little bit C++, Java, and I didn't really understand how the web worked at the time, but then as many people do, I did an internship at a small e-commerce company here in Berlin. And then the people were like, it was so strange, right? Because when you study computer science and you're a little bit younger, you're typically like, oh, I understand how things work. And then I entered the company, the real team, and they were like rocking the terminal. We had PHP, Magento running, and was like, holy moly, you have no clue what's happening here. Like, I thought that I was prepared from my studies to enter the industry, and I was so not. But then I was lucky to work with this team, and after I got my degrees, they also hired me, and that is how I entered the web.
Okay, awesome. I can totally relate. Like when you study, it's only the top level or the simple things, writing a couple of programs. But when you come to the company, then it's like whole different level, right? From production, testing, then whatnot.
Yeah. Especially when you come from the university, you don't know what you don't know, right? I was 100% this person. I was like, oh yeah, I figured that out. And then I was like, holy, you don't know that. I sat in meetings, not even knowing what they were talking about. And I was like, oh boy. But I was up for the challenge, and I still am. And then that's the beauty of the web.
Awesome. Glad. Good to hear that part of the story. What's a formative mistake or learning moment early in your career that shaped your approach to web development?
I think the team that I started working with plays a very fundamental role. So I was surrounded by 2, 3, 4 people that were very exceptional in what they did, and they had a certain approach to quality and understanding how things work. So it was not, sometimes you have developers that just kind of ship it and don't care how it works and these kind of things. But this team kind of from the early on kind of taught me, hey, this is how it should go, and you have to understand how this works. And then we move forward. Take your time, don't rush it, but understand what you're building, what you're doing, and how things work under the hood. And I think with this team and from early on, I kind of got hooked by the opportunities, but also these people taught me that you have to be curious and you have to understand how things work to build good things. And I think this was one of the most important lessons that I learned. And they also gave me the opportunity to do these kind of things, right? Especially when you have new people coming in and you give them a task, of course. And today, it's even more critical than ever, right? A person can ChatGPT or Claude their way to success, of course. But if you then ask a person, hey, but how does it work? And you just get like a shrug emoji, and it's like, that's not how it should be. And I think this was really the few people that I started working in the web, they kind of shaped how I work to this day.
Okay. Glad you had some great mentors.
I'm so happy. That is now 15 years ago, and I'm still very, very thankful for meeting this team.
Exactly. Because I also felt the same way. The last team that I worked, I had a colleague called Pablo, and Pablo was really telling me, understand things, question things, be curious.
Yeah.
So that shaped you, and that is very much important as a developer, right? Not just.
It also makes a difference, right? It's like you understand bugs quicker, you can approach problems quicker. Knowing how things really work makes a difference. And it's not only about shipping fast, it's also about shipping good and understanding what you're shipping.
I can see that in your newsletter also when you're like dipping deep, that you're trying and experimenting things. So that's great.
I like to go deep, right? I mean, we could talk about people. I mean, the web development community is in an odd space right now, right? Everything is framework driven more than ever, it feels like. But it is sometimes very strange when, and it's not the fault of the people that enter the web industry and kind of come from a React bootcamp, but they don't know that certain HTML exists, or they don't know how accessibility works, how the browser works. And these kind of things are kind of, it's not their fault again, right? But it's super strange. If you're developing for the browser, you have to kind of at least have a little bit understanding of how it works, right? When is parsed what, and how the whole things all play together. I think this is very important. And yeah, that is what I'm trying to do with Web Weekly, right? Kind of pointing people towards, hey, you might want to know this. And yeah, I think it works. So I'm very proud of the things that I shared in Web Weekly.
Definitely dig deeper because I have some questions on that too. All right. Awesome. So that was the end of personal journey. We'll go next to your favorite thing, that is the Web Weekly newsletter. How do you decide what makes it to the newsletter each week?
Well, I think initially I started blogging. I think this is when it all started. And I made it a habit to kind of blog very quick notes. Today I learned posts is what I call it. It was a little bit trendy like 5 years ago. I don't see many people doing that these days. But from there, I kind of pivoted to writing the newsletter, and I try to include things in the newsletter whenever I'm like, I didn't know this. So this is kind of my bar for including things in Web Weekly.
Okay.
Or this is how it started, because I want to create, of course, the newsletter that I want to consume, right? And I'm very much focused on new browser features, how things work internally, and learning new skills and chops so that I can build better things for the web. And the things that I include in Web Weekly usually kind of either are like that, I learned them, that is very important to me, or now that we have kind of the AI world, I also like to include things that are just exceptionally well done, right? So for example, I sent out today, the newsletter today, and there's an article about databases in there. I'm not a database person, right? But the article is so well done with a lot of interactive components and explanations. And I just see when I read these kind of things, it's very obvious that the person creating this content cares. And I think content that people care about, where you see there's an attention to detail, that it has a certain level of quality, this is also usually the stuff that goes into Web Weekly. And well, I think that the web lost a little bit of its webbiness, right? So the web used to be kind of weird places or weird forums and all these kind of things. And I don't see these very often because we all just kind of hang out on social media or on LinkedIn or whatever we do. and the web isn't as webby as it was. So I always try to include also something that kind of reminds of the good old days where the web used to be strange. And that's just for me to have a little bit of fun on the way.
That's awesome. But the things like, I see that you are also reading many newsletters, or you had to constantly be on the web to see what's new, what you can include. But where does this, for example, if you have to include something, then you go to MDN. MDN is like a huge collection. But if you have to choose something for the newsletter, how does particular topic come to your mind, or where do you pick it from?
Well, I pick it from different resources, right? You're totally right that I'm subscribed to a lot of newsletters myself, but I also read a lot of RSS feeds, right? RSS is another technology that more people should use, right? Because I have I don't know how many blogs and people are in my RSS feed. I think it's 500 plus for sure.
Oh my God.
And I know the people that I want to follow. And what is important to me is kind of getting access to information that doesn't have an in-between or a middleman, right? I don't want to have an algorithm in between. I don't want to, when person ABC publishes something, I want to know about it. And I decide on Web Weekly what to include. So first of all, sometimes I obviously include trending things that are also in other resources, but I'm purposefully trying to include things in Web Weekly that you haven't seen in other newsletters. So that is very important to me. And this is where the RSS feeds and all these kind of things from elsewhere come into play, right? Because I want to make it something that you open or that people open. It's like, I haven't seen this before anywhere. And this is kind of how I decide what to put in. Yeah, of course, as you mentioned, then there are kind of random things like MDN articles or something, which is just like, I have a huge bookmarking tool too, where it's like, people should know about this, people should know about this. And then every time when I sit down, I can just pick random things. And an entire Web Weekly edition, I try to be very, or let's say as balanced as possible, right? So I always want to have a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. That becomes very hard these days though, because CSS is so much on fire. And kind of Web Weekly kind of leans towards being a CSS newsletter. And I love that, but actually I try to have a balance for all the other technologies too.
Okay. Awesome. So what RSS reader do you use? Do you have any recommendation there?
I use a paid Feedly account and use it with the macOS app reader. And so with 2 E's, REEDER.
Oh, okay.
I think it's fine. I mean, it's an RSS reader, right? It gets some stuff and renders in HTML. I think it's fine.
Yes.
But yeah, but the feeds are, I think, the core piece. I also have some of the good blogs on my blog when you go to /blogroll. And that is also something that I would love to see more, right? People that publish kind of things, that we all start again kind of pointing back to each other's. And I'm kind of also part of a smaller community of bloggers where it's just like, you publish this, let me share some eyeballs here and there. And I know that certain people do good things. And this is just what I feel like the web was about like 10 years ago. And I would love to see more of that, right? I would like to be this web dev community where people share, kind of celebrate technology and the good stuff, because actually the web space is pretty on fire these days.
Glad to hear that you're kind of inspiration, Stefan, already. I find so many valuable tips in the newsletter. So has anyone ever told you that they actually use something from your newsletter in their project? Like any memorable aha moments?
Oh yeah. I mean, Web Weekly right now is at roughly 6,200 subscribers. And first of all, I really appreciate when people answer it, because sending a newsletter is strange, dude. Sometimes you send an email to 6,000 people, right? And then there's absolute crickets. You just have the usual 10 people that unsubscribe and nobody responds ever, right? But sometimes, so I've got an ongoing conversation with, 10, 15 people where we just send each other emails. And many people actually tell me that Web Weekly is one of the newsletters where it's off the mainstream and that they learn something that they will use in their daily business just because they now figured out, this now works in browsers. That, of course, makes me very happy, because this is actually where I also want to go, right? I want to share information in browser technologies and web technologies where people can say, okay, I now don't need to write 150 lines of JavaScript or do npm install, because we now have view transitions, or we have this and this and this and this. And To answer your question, yeah, I mean, my focus is to share things that is useful for people in their daily job. And I think it works. And people, when they respond, when and if they respond, tell me, hey, I learned something. Thank you very much. And that kind of makes my day when like today. Today I sent out the newsletter. Let's see if someone responds. But of course, it makes me very happy when someone tells me, hey, that was actually useful.
Yeah, that I can relate to this as well. But yours is a bigger audience, 6,000 people, and people doesn't responding. Mine is like 155 people not responding. Yes, I understand, but I don't know. Sometimes people are so used to seeing do not reply to this mail kind of thing, right? When they get a huge chain of mails, maybe somebody have like an fear that, okay, this is maybe going to a lot of people, others are going to see my reply. I don't know what their fear is.
Yeah.
But I have been following a guy called Josh Spector. He's like kind of a marketing guy. And I saw some kind of questions that you can include. I see one of the things that the songs in your thing, that is a good addition. That makes people to respond. Yeah, but he gives us a lot of tips. Right.
Yeah,
and
I used to follow Josh too, right? It's a typical marketing advice that you find there. For developers, it's a little bit trickier though, right? And you're 100% right? So first of all, I like music, right? But also it's kind of, I want Web Weekly to be that people open it. It's like, it's not like another random newsletter, right? But the main goal is that people open the email. It's like, oh, let's see what Stefan is up to, right? And of course, the Web Weekly jukebox, for the people that know it. So every Web Weekly edition includes a song from someone from the community. And then they can tell why they right now like this song for coding or for life or whatever. And I personally enjoy that because I discover new music. But of course, it also gives people that are reading along a little bit of like a feeling of being part of the game, right? If someone now recognizes, hey, that's my song. And many people don't care. And also when I talk to Web Weekly readers, like, I couldn't care less about the music, Stefan. I was like, I do. And some people do. And that is part of the thing. But you're right? So there starts a connection. And very often when people kind of reply and say, hey, Stefan, this is my song, then usually a conversation starts after that, right? It's like, hey, what are you up to? And then it's Web Weekly. So I can connect with more people, which is great. It's still strange that I have some friends or people that I know that in America and in Australia and in India and in Africa. And then you write emails with people all over the world that is just like mind-blowing still to me. But then you can also kind of make a connection and it's like, hey, maybe one day when I'm around, I can say, hey, next week I will be in Toronto. And hey, someone wants to go for coffee, and I'm very certain that for the bigger cities, that there are some people that will reply and say, hey, okay, let's hang out, Stefan. Don't know anyone here, so let me help you out.
Right. That's good. So people who are watching this podcast, next time when you get a mail from Stefan, do reply or engage with him. It already creates a good connection with the person who is sending it, and they'll be so glad that you replied.
I mean, it's the same for social media, right? You probably can relate. Whenever you post something, and a lot of people so we all consume so much content, and I'm guilty of that myself, right? But for a person that kind of puts blood and sweat and tears into creating something, and then it just receives crickets, even a tiny heart or a, hey, thank you, that was good, goes a long way for the people that actually create stuff with their own hands and kind of with their own brain juice. And I think for all the creators and for all of us kind of consuming content, it's important to also say, hey, thank you, that was cool. And I think we all should do that more.
Right. I hope things change after this podcast.
I'm not complaining. I know what it is, right? But it is.
Things have to change.
I mean, that is the question. I know I'm a little bit derailing here, right? But if now everybody is generating things with it's harder for creators, right? It's harder for people that actually put in the work. And if we as a web dev community or we as all the people consuming content are not focusing on the people doing that, then the people will stop doing it. And that is actually I'm not very interested in consuming only AI generated articles. I'm not interested like at all. And if we're not careful there and we don't treat our creators and the people we appreciate, well, then we will not have many creators in the future.
Yeah. I guess this is somehow relatable to kind of magazines. There are like so many magazines which got, eventually stopped when people stopped buying or stopped reading it. So yeah, it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a bigger topic, right? Everybody consumes. We now reach my kind of passion topic here, right? It's also the thing that everybody kind of expect that content is free, right? And that is also a huge problem. So when magazine didn't start, we all used to buy magazines for $10, 15 euros or whatever, and someone got paid for it. And now everybody's like, hey, why do I should I pay $2 for that? And it's like, hey, you just bought a coffee for $7 in your every day in the morning. What's the problem with paying someone for something that took 2 weeks to create? So this puzzles me. It's absurd to me where we are at right now.
Crazy world we live in.
Yeah.
You include so many great articles in every edition. So that's already very impressive. That means more knowledge means the stronger the skills you have. I find it personally very hard to read and write regularly, and I know many others have the same problem. So, what's your secret to stay on top of it all?
Well, my secret is just, I think I love, so from the early beginning, I just love creating and technology. I think it gets me very excited. I'm this person that reads about the new JavaScript API and I cannot sleep because I would like to try it. So yesterday, for example, I had to force myself to go to bed because I had an idea for something that I want to build, and I had to force myself to go to bed because it's very easy for me just to get so excited. I mean, making something move on the screen, looking good, looking sharp, gets me so excited that I'm just like, wow, I need this. I need to tell the world about this. And so this entire technology thing is just such a big part of my life. So I wake up in the morning, so I'm self-employed, so I have a very flexible working schedule. But when I wake up, I usually spend like an hour, 90 minutes every day reading tech news. That is just my morning. And from there, Web Weekly or running a newsletter is just a logical consequence, right? Because otherwise it would be very hard for me to kind of justify this time. And when I consume so much content, it's very easy to just, oh, this was cool, this was cool, this was cool. And every Sunday or Monday morning, I already have a list of good stuff that I either blocked about myself or that I would like, or that gets me excited so that I couldn't sleep, that I need to tell the world about it. So the answer to the question is probably, I guess, just I consume a lot of stuff and I prioritize being on top of the cutting edge and kind of pushing the web forward.
Right. So being passionate about it and have it as a habit, right? Not pushing yourself to or force yourself to read something.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, so I work with many teams, but and there's nothing wrong with being the 9-to-5 developer, right? You will get the job done just fine, right? You can just go to your yearly conference, and I'm not the person telling you that you shouldn't do that. But if you're excited about whatever you're building, whatever you're doing, there's a little bit of difference to the person that just treats it as a job. I totally understand everybody who cannot have this passion or doesn't have the passion, it's just paying the bills, right? But for me, this entire thing is just like, holy moly, this is exciting and I want to build good stuff. And I'm just prioritizing that in my life.
Okay. Weekly publishing is demanding. So how do you stay consistent, avoid burnout, or handle weeks when you're not inspired?
Well, it's a tough one for sure, right? So
Right.
my newsletter takes me easily 8 hours to create every week.
One newsletter takes 8 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if
That's
you
almost a day's work.
Yeah,
If you
so I'm now self-employed, as said, for almost 2 years, which means that I now have a monetary value next to the time that I spent. Right, usually I bill in hours, and I can now pretty much tell how much Web Weekly costs me. Right, and of course this is very tough and challenging. And I mean, I'm now at edition 170, which in weeks, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 years. And it is very challenging. What has helped me over the last 6 months, and I'm only getting there. I'm a person that is very strongly driven by principles, and I called this thing Web Weekly, right? So I was stressing about sending it weekly on an absurd level, right? Because I couldn't miss a week. This is not how this is supposed to go. But these days I'm a little bit more flexible. Sometimes I skip a week. I was just like, whatever. It's not the end of the world, which of course is a little bit tougher when you have sponsors booked. So because when I have sponsors booked, well, then I have to send it. But I'm trying to be a little bit more chill about it. What should I tell you? Putting in anything like on a weekly basis is way, way harder than everybody expected to be. It is sitting every Wednesday doing something 3 hours. It's like hitting the gym every Monday, right? It's very easy to do on the 1st of January and you will do it for 4 weeks. But then everybody's like, that is actually very hard. And yes, it is. You have to prioritize doing it.
Right. I already saw or read before, because you started with monthly, or
Yeah.
then you switch to weekly because monthly people would forget and there would be no organic growth or things like that. I understand. So yeah, 8 hours. So people have to also appreciate the fact Stefan is taking 8 hours to just see the newsletter that you're reading every week. So huge respect there, Stefan, for that.
I mean, it goes for everybody, right? Whenever you look at YouTube or whenever you look, I see it very often that people are, YouTube might be a good example. I see a lot of times people talking about, oh, this person just puts on their phone and they kind of record a short video for 2 minutes on their bed. But this person then has like 100 short videos. If you take the hour to edit this is 100 hours. And it's very easy to ignore that this is actually, consistency is so hard. And then, I mean, you can look at the huge channels or creators out there. I mean, look at Mr. Beast, right? Mr. Beast is now the biggest YouTube channel, but he's doing this and prioritizing this his entire life, right? If you like it or not, this dude has passion and consistency, and that is mad props for that.
Seriously, yeah. Even for the 30-second shots, you need to spend 2 hours or 3 hours to get it right.
That's the thing, right? You have to record it a couple of times, then you have to edit it, then you have to publish it.
Yeah.
There's this whole kind of chain of things that you have to do after, and then if it's like, oh, it's just a short video and you sit in your bed and maybe not. And even, I mean, you with your podcast here right now, right? This is, we had a little bit of ping pong earlier. So you prepared in an hour, we now recorded for an hour, and then you will edit it in another hour. So this is then 3-4 hours, and nobody sees that particularly, right? But
exactly,
these kind of things are just very hard to do. And well, yeah. So props to you too.
Thanks. It takes around 10 hours for one guest, like from start to end.
So you see what, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Definitely. It's not an easy game, but if you're passionate about it, it doesn't get that difficult.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome. So the next question, has AI played a role in helping you speed up or simplify your newsletter workflow?
A little bit. Well, I used to use Grammarly for copy and grammar spell check.
Exactly.
It was before the AI bubble, right? So, but they use sorts of AI. And these days, I use some custom workflows to do the copy check for me. But overall, there is no AI involved in Work Weekly, and this is also something also not on my blog. So for everything that I create, there are certain AI workflows, like to create captions, to do spell check. So I do these kind of things. But everything else is just me, and I want to make that kind of like at the core how I see the things that I create, right? That this is a person doing these kind of things, because I think there's value. And in the future, I hope and I honestly believe that people will look for human content more than just words or just sounds. When we consider a podcast, for example, we could also now just generate a conversation between you and me with our voices, right? Is there value in it? I mean, everybody has to decide on their own if there's value in it. But so I'm putting in the 8 hours, similar to how you put in the 10 hours, and I hope that people appreciate it.
Right. Yeah, that's I totally agree that this shouldn't go out of our hands, or we shouldn't lose the human connection, right?
I mean, we already do, right? It's super strange. Sometimes people reach out to me and say, hey, I created this newsletter, and this newsletter kind of parses the web dev Reddit for a week. Then it fetches all the articles, summarizes, puts it in an email and send it out. Can you please promote that in Web Weekly? And I'm like,
okay.
I don't know. No, it's a super strange world these days.
Are there any browser APIs or web platform features you think are underrated or deserve more attention?
Well, for everybody doing web dev, look at what happened to CSS in the last 2 years. Everything CSS is heavily underrated. I feel like there's a huge, that had a term, right? So I think it was coined by Chris Collier like 5 years ago. So, and I think it got even stronger. So what we have now are the front end developers, and we have the back of the front end developers. So the differentiation there is, so front is usually people that really care about browser standards, CSS architecture, HTML, semantics, accessibility, these kind of things. And then you have kind of the back end front end developers that then care about JavaScript architecture, how Redux works, how to configure V, how to get the server rendering models and Next.js configured. And I feel like that this divide between these groups just got bigger and bigger, right? If you're very knee deep in your JavaScript stack, you probably don't know that add starting style is a thing, or that add view transition is a thing, or that we can now transition height to auto, or that these tiny things, that there are relative colors in CSS. There's just so much things going on. The web is so much moving forward. So I always thought that staying up to date with browser technologies was and is very important, but it has never been as important as today, because we also have evergreen browsers, right? So this doesn't mean that we should now jump on all the latest and greatest features, but if a feature is in the stable browsers for 3 or 4 versions, I highly advocate for, hey, first of all, go for progressive enhancement, but then use the shiny and greatest tools. So very often you can drop or remove one of the heavy modules, or just 100 lines that clock up your CPU cycles to do something in JavaScript. There's so much stuff going, and web fundamentals, I think, are more important than ever these days, because the browser can do so much more, and there's so much things entering the browsers, and it's just absurd what the browsers can do these days.
Yeah, true. I mean, sometimes when I see or read your newsletter, I feel like, oh my God, there are so many things going on. I wonder when will I have to know these things, right? Or to implement these things. But at some point I understand, okay, it's good to have this knowledge, but when you're building stuff, then you can use this knowledge and put into your workflow.
100%. But I mean, there's a difference between knowing that something exists and knowing how it works, right? For example, if today in Web Weekly is included that view transitions, so JavaScript view transitions now entered all browsers, right? This is great. This is wonderful news to make kind of transitioning elements from A to B without kind of having to wrangle with positioning and all this stuff. Do you know, are we now all experts in view transitions? No, I'm not. But when I have the opportunity to kind of build something where an UI just could morph into another UI, where I have like, oh, this would be cool if we could now morph this, and if this could do this and this and this. Knowing that things exist, I think, is a core skill in technology. Well, nobody's an expert at everything, but if you need to do it, learning it on the fly when it becomes necessary, I think this is a skill today.
I never thought web was this big. When I first started it, I just thought it was the classic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but oh my God, it is as big as anything else out there.
I mean, it's also tricky, right? If people, so I still used to grow up with Stack Overflow, right? And even there, then we can you would look at a question, and then at some point, I really appreciate all the people back in the day in Stack Overflow that just showed up 5 years later and was like, well, this answer isn't that great anymore because browsers can now do that and that, right? So you would enter Stack Overflow and it was like, okay, here's the latest information. But now kind of, I feel like people use kind of Claude or ChatGPT to find their answers, and all these kind of models have a cutoff date that is a year or 1.5 years old. 1.5 years old in browser land and browser development is a lot of time today. So very often you get answers like, oh, you should do it like this, where everybody is kind of keeping track of what the web is doing or what is possible on the web. And I was like, well, yeah, this answer is correct for 2 years ago, right? And I feel like staying up to date is really one of the core things to consider when you want to build a good web with good technology.
That's true. I mean, I have felt this when I'm developing stuff. I get so much outdated code or libraries, and I wonder, oh my God. But these days I'm using a bit of MCP because
what do you use?
I was using Astro MCP for my blog recently, and for mono repository there is something called NX, and they also have this. So kind of make life easy because I don't have to do all my manual work of reading the documentation of be on top of the latest things. If something is outdated, then
I mean, that's another workflow, right? If you use AI to kind of feed the docs and kind of use it to summarize the docs and find what you're after, great, do that. But I think a lot of people just go, how do I do this in the web dev world? And then they expect to be correct, right? And I think that's not the right flow. So for example, an MDM, I saw that yesterday, an MDN MCP server might be a good thing,
really?
Right? Yeah. I mean, you could ask and you could rely on the MDN information. So I would be more positive about these kind of things rather than just going to ChatGPT. It's like, hey, how can I transition CSS height to auto? Because the answer I prove you that is probably not great.
That's true. When I spoke about MCP, I quickly thought, did you build an MCP for your whole collection of newsletters? That would be so cool.
I did not yet, but all my writing sits in Contentful, so the headless CMS. And it shouldn't be that hard to have an MCP server with all the stuff that I've written. It's definitely on the to-do list.
Okay. Premium stuff, I guess.
Maybe, I don't know.
All right. So I guess I'm done with this round, Web Weekly. So let's jump to the next round. This is advice for juniors and mid-level developers. If someone has 2 to 3 years of experience, what should they absolutely learn? I mean, beyond frameworks.
Well, be curious and understand how it works. I think very often, so I've been in several job interviews, and it doesn't matter if you have a lot of questions around whatever framework you use, right? If you understand how one framework does it, most of the time all the principles kind of apply to the other frameworks too, right? So if you understand how the virtual DOM works for the first time, it doesn't matter if it's Vue, React, whatever, right? If you understand all these rendering parts, and if it's now server-side rendered, if it's React server components, if it's client-side rendered, if it's ISR, there are a lot of acronyms, right? If you understand how all these kind of works, you will define whatever. Be curious and understand what is working and why it is working. And ideally, and I think when I was interviewing to hiring people, right, I don't necessarily care if you know how to do something with the latest and greatest framework. Because a person that understands how the web works, how certain paradigms works, where it's like, oh, this is how rendering works, this is how this core technology, it really doesn't matter. Yeah. And it will show. A person that understands how certain technologies, so core web technologies work, man, this person will onboard for 2 weeks, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I can use A, B, C, D, E. It's at the end of this all just JavaScript, some web technology, and we render something in the browser. So I will figure it out. So my advice would be reach the point where you can say, I know how things work as quickly as possible. And for that, you have to be curious and don't kind of take the facts, right? If something, if it's like, hey, I don't know why this works, well then, figure it out. I mean, you might be already done, and you could maybe move your ticket from in progress to merge review or pull request or whatever you do. But if you understand how it works, that will move you faster in your career quicker.
That's true. I can't agree more. I remember the Steve Jobs quote suddenly, stay hungry, stay foolish, right? Awesome. Great advice. What are some common mistakes you see developers make again and again?
Common mistakes that people make all over again is kind of not considering the user, is what I would say. And this is something where I'm a little bit sad about the current state of the web, right? And it has always been like that, but I feel like it's getting worse. So what do I mean by that? I mean that we want to build a web that is working for everybody, which means that it should be accessible, it should be fast, it should be yada, 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 yada. And a lot of times people don't even have that on their radar, right? And sometimes I see, especially in social media, people celebrating, oh, the new cool website from person ABC. And then there's new company ABC. And then that is a 25 megabyte website that is slow as heck, right? And that's kind of missing the point. I mean, I'm sitting here on my fast telecom Wi-Fi on my MacBook Pro. I'm in a very privileged position, right? Not everybody has that, and I have a crappy old phone, and I already recognize it. Sometimes I'm browsing the web on my phone, and it's like, oh, this is not really blocking my phone, this one website, this one bundle of JavaScript. So I would kind of love to see more people kind of caring of what we put out there to have a good quality level, and also kind of treat the web as kind of as a craft, maybe, right? It should be like, oh, this is now beautifully done. It's not just some boxes in Flexbox, but it is kind of thought through to something delightful. And honestly, I mean, how often do you use a website or you browse around and you're like, man, this is beautiful. How often does that happen? I don't think it happens very often. And I think it should. And I think a little bit this should be our responsibility as kind of web developers to ship good stuff, whatever that means for you.
I guess the problem comes from the coaches or the sources, because when somebody is taking like a simple W3 school course, we all just learn top level things. But I guess nobody goes in deep to the accessibility or anything else, all this bundling stuff. And I guess people never come back to learn these things like when they have time. So I guess...
I mean, it kind of connects to the previous points, right? You could now say, okay, I'm done here, it works, right? But I honestly believe if you're a little bit more curious and you look a little bit behind the curtain, it's like, okay, you come across certain topics very, very quickly, right? The button is a button. Don't use a div with a quick handler. You will see that very quickly. And then especially new developers can decide, okay, I don't care, it works. Or kind of people start, okay, why is that better than the other approach, right? And when you look a little bit, it's like, oh, because of that. And then it's not very far to enter web performance, right? And then you kind of was like, oh, I shouldn't include that much stuff, and images should be like this, and this should be like this. And then you open the next curtain, the next box, and the next box. And if you're just a little bit curious and you kind of put the bar that you want to push a little bit higher and you don't stop, I think you're just growing and growing and growing. And that will be the difference to the person not looking behind the curtain, right? Because at some point you will just have so many random data points where it's like, oh, you should do this for accessibility. You should do this for performance. You should do this for SEO. You should do this and this and this and this and this. That for 10 years, you will reach a point where it's like, oh, I know how the web works. And you will be able to ship better stuff. And I'm 100% convinced by this.
So it's like a wine. It ages and gets better, right?
Yep.
So developers get better through time. All right. How should developers balance learning the deep technical stuff versus keeping up with the frameworks and tools?
I mean, do whatever is possible in working hours or in your time. I totally see that when you're now in the React ecosystem and the next React version comes along with yet another round of new features and Next.js breaks and other things. I mean, you have to be on top of that because it's just your tool of choice for the market, right? I think there's no general advice that you can do there. First of all, you have to get the job done, right? But what I'm saying is like, you have to define what does it mean get the job done. Is it like it works or will it be it works and it is actually pretty cool? I mean, there's a difference there, or it works and I know how it works and why it works. So I'm just advocating a little bit more curiosity.
So I guess it boils down to the same point. Be curious about things, right? How things work. And then it makes you to read the stuff and go a little more beyond and figure
100%.
out things.
100%. Yes.
That's true. Okay. Awesome. Next round is future web. What web front-end trends are you watching for the next 3 to 5 years?
Next 3 to 5 years. So I'm watching very closely what happens with the interoperability initiative. So browsers agreed to ship a certain feature set of web features per year. So if you're a web developer, you should definitely look at what is included in interop. And because these are the features that will come in the next year, most likely for you to be used. Then I'm very curious to see what happens with the entire CSS world. Things are changing, and I honestly think that the web will hopefully become a little bit leaner. What do I mean by that? When we look, I mean, you mentioned that you're using Astro, right? Astro is already pushing for the zero JavaScript approach by default, which doesn't mean that you don't need or shouldn't use JavaScript, but for a content side, I would love to see that we reach a point where the web is a little bit leaner, where we can rely on view transitions so that everything feels like apps, but actually it's just a bunch of static HTML files. And so that is something that I'm most excited about in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I hope it becomes this new approach of building for the web. I mean, there's always the differentiation. If you're building Figma, right? Figma will not work with static HTML. I don't even know how to build Figma. No idea. So there you probably need a web app that loads 50 megabytes of JavaScript. And it's a completely valid use case, right? Does Medium.com, for example, need 50 megabytes of JavaScript for some sans serif text? I'm not sure, right? So I hope that over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we end up more with use the right tool for the job.
Okay. Good points there. Hope I see this coming.
Let's see. Maybe not. Years. Maybe not.
All right. What are some things you wish more developers paid attention to, like accessibility, privacy-first development, or even just reading MDN docs properly? So do you have like one specific thing or two things?
Accessibility, performance, basics.
Okay. These are...
I think I covered a lot of things, but a lot of opinions here already. And know how it works and make it work for everybody. That's what we're paying to do.
I think like big industries, I don't know. In EU, if it is a rule that every website should be accessible, but in some countries, they are very strict about having accessibility first development.
I mean, that is correct. I think since this year, we have the accessibility whatever act. I don't know the particular name. And it is pushing forward, right? But it's now funny, right? So for example, if you look at OpenAI's browser that was released like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, like
Atlas, right?
And it's funny because Atlas will now rely on area roles to kind of crawl the web, right? Or control the web. And I'm not saying that is a good thing or a bad thing, but now consider that. We are now fighting for 10 years to make the web more accessible for people that use screen readers, and very few people care about this. And now OpenAI comes along and is like, hey, your web should be accessible because then our AI browser can use it better. And everybody's like, okay. So I think regardless of what the motivation is, I hope that we will end a point where the web will be more accessible, because have you ever built something that a person with a screen reader uses and you watch them doing that? That is absolutely fabulous when you see how people actually navigate the web without the web. And when it's your stuff and it works, man, you can be so proud when it's like, oh, I'm actually doing good stuff here. And I wish that more people do that.
But for the people who haven't learned about this accessibility, it's like an hard start. Do you recommend AI to take over and make your site accessible? Do you recommend this?
No, AI, especially when it comes to accessibility, there are a certain group of people. So accessibility is not equal accessibility, right? So, and I'm far away from claiming to be an accessibility expert, because because it's just another level of tools. So you have different browsers, then you have different screen reader technologies, for example. Maybe you have Braille, other assistive technologies. So there's so much research that goes into this entire topic. And there are accessibility experts that kind of deal with these kind of things. So when people say they are really dealing with accessibility, I think that is a whole nother topic, right? So if you now start getting into this, the first action should just be to get a general understanding what it means to use a screen reader, right? How do people navigate the web when they don't use their mouse? Get a little bit fluent on, I'm on a MacBook usually, get a little bit fluent on how to use VoiceOver to do certain things. And from there, kind of do some research, and follow the people that do that for a living, right? That realize like, oh, this now doesn't work because of this and this and this and this. I cannot know these things, but I'm very, very sure that when I have a certain accessibility problem, that I have 5 blogs in my reading rotation where I can then say, this person figured this out, how this works with VoiceOver, with Dragonfly, with NVDA, and whatever all the screen readers are out there kind of works. But getting a basic understanding of what it means to close your eyes and kind of navigate the web with just hearing what this web is about, this is the first step.
That's true. I guess maybe then involving AI will bring a whole lot of nonsense stuff into the accessibility, and that would probably even confuse the people with this.
100%. We see it in coding too, right? Sometimes you use AI to do autocompletion. It's just fancy math character generators, right? So it's even another level then. If you want to then go there to say, hey, is this accessible? How should this really know? Sometimes it messes up like a for loop just because a random thing was in between, right? So I don't think that the AI is, especially when it comes to technology that should enable humans. I'm very skeptical that AI is the answer here.
Okay, yeah, good one. I would take that answer. If somebody is building with AI today, what's one do or one don't you'd strongly recommend?
Do evaluate what it can be useful for. Give as much context as possible. Don't trust it in bare bones or vanilla settings. So I use, for example, Cloud Code. Not for everything, but I know exactly what tasks I want to use Cloud Code for, because I know it will do a good job. And I also use auto-completion in VS Code, but I have it a little bit delayed. So the default settings is like kind of interrupts you all the time, like 500 milliseconds or something. You can change that setting.
On your face.
So for me, it does that after 5 seconds or something. So I know exactly when I'm now, okay, let's take a breath, and I'm pretty sure AI will now do that. If you kind of go into the AI world of coding, you will figure out fairly quickly when it does work and when it doesn't. So that would be my advice. And for the don'ts, don't blindly trust it. That's it.
Okay, good one. I also liked, or I came to know about this setting that you said, the 5 seconds thing. Sometimes I felt like, okay, it's getting really hard to think.
Actually, code. Right? Yeah, it's like, Don't go away. I was like saying, this people at Microsoft GitHub, this is not the approach here. I just want to type two variables.
Yeah, and you get like one whole paragraph of code.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's end of all the rounds. So that's good news. So the next round is the rapid fire round. So I'll have 10 questions. This
All
shouldn't
right.
take more time.
Okay.
Book or blog post you gift the most or like to recommend to others?
Wow. Blog posts. Blog posts, books, I don't know. Haven't read the book for a while. Blog post, everything that just coming. We were doing rapid fire, right? Everything that Josh Comeau writes. Because the Josh Comeau blog is just fabulous. He cares. You see it. It's always good stuff.
Awesome. I've seen his stuff, but never had time to read it.
Yeah, but
I'll
with all the
definitely check it.
interactive things in between, it's like one blog post is easily a week of work and it shows. And I admire people doing that.
Awesome. Favorite tech YouTubers or YouTubers in the field of web development?
Favorite YouTube? I was very skeptical at first, but Primeagen grew on me. So I see me watching him a lot and I'm actually entertained.
Okay. I guess this is the guy who does fun stuff as well, right?
He's the Netflix guy who started streaming like in Corona, and he has a strong mustache. And
I think I remember.
He is always, he sits in front of a green screen and he's like, I think he's a Vimmer or T-Marxer. He has very strong opinions and he's a little bit loud. So when you watch him for the first time, it's like, oh, this guy is intense. But at some point you get used to it and that is actually good. So Primeagen.
Awesome. Name 3 of your role models or heroes. Can be tech or others.
And then let's pick tech ones. So when I started, role models still to this day were Paul Irish, Eddie Osmani. Who was the third one? Don't have a third one, but I think I wanted to be like Paul Irish and Eddie Osmani.
Awesome. Name 3 skills that coders need other than coding.
Patience, curiosity, empathy.
Awesome. Next one. What's a small productivity trick to get things done?
Get yourself a command line launcher or a command launcher. I'm using Raycast with a ton of custom snippets. I use it for everything. Love it.
It's like the Spotlight, right?
Yeah, it's the Spotlight replacement.
Yes.
But the nice thing about it is that you can write custom scripts and custom functionality with React components. And so, for example, when I collect resources for Web Weekly, it's a Raycast command, right? It's like title, URL, boom, then it's gone again. If I do spell check, it goes into Raycast, it copies my clipboard, puts it into some AI commands and formats it and spits it out again. Raycast also comes with a clipboard manager, right? If you don't use a clipboard manager, people use a clipboard manager. It will change your life.
Awesome. Okay. I learned a lot of things from that. Which 3 tools or subscription do you find yourself relying on all time as a developer?
Yeah, paid tools, what I use. So I use Cloud Code with a paid tool for sure. I pay for Raycast. I pay for a good bookmarking tool. So I pay for a tool that is called Raindrop. And that's probably just because I'm using or I'm running a newsletter. Probably though, I'm not hesitant on paying for software. So I have probably paying for more software. I also pay, for example, for Descript, which is when you do podcasts with video. It's beautiful to kind of add captions to videos. Beautiful software. Really love it. And I think when there is some value in a certain software, I think it's fine to pay $10 a month for something because people work on it.
That's true. That's true. It's always supporting the creators, right?
Yep.
As developers, we sit a lot. So do you have a hack or habit to stay healthy?
Yeah, well, don't sit. So my habit is here. So I have a normal office chair next to me. Right now, I'm sitting on a flexible stool. So if people watch the video, I'm actually sitting straight and I can jiggle around a little bit. And then I also have a standing desk and I also have a walking pad. So very often I walk during the day.
Ah, awesome. So already you are worried about this and you're taking care of this. So that's beautiful.
I'm now 40 years old. I had my first back injury in May. When you have this pain for the first time, you will change things. Well, it is how it is. 1 in 3 men before 40 have back issues.
By sitting alone?
Yeah, but from sitting too much, yeah.
From sitting. Oh my God. Didn't know this. One enjoyable activity besides coding?
I go for 2, running my bike. So I got into long distance bike riding this year and going for a nice run.
Okay. Nice. Name 3 movies that inspired you.
Movies. Are shows allowed to?
Yes, of course.
Okay, movies. One of the movies that I will recommend all the time is called Remember Me. It's about a couple. It's a love story with the most surprising, crushing ending ever. So Remember Me, a great movie. And when it comes to shows, This Is Us was a show that I still appreciate a lot. It's a family show with a lot of diverse actors. So this is like incredibly to feel something. And when it comes to thrilling shows, Money Heist was the absolute best show in the last 2 or 3 years. It was ridiculous how much tension you can put into one show. That was top notch.
They made a good ending as well. Sometimes some series doesn't give you a good ending, but I loved the ending.
Yeah, they had a dip in between, right? There was like, shouldn't they have stopped now? But they recovered, and this show was just like, what the actual is going on here? It was beautiful. Loved it.
The director also told, we know that how much people are waiting, so we are actually bound to give them a good ending. So
very important. Nice thing. The ending can mess it up entirely. If the ending sucks, you're really messing with the entire show.
Right. Where do you usually go to stay up to date on latest trend on web dev or news? Do you have like any specifics?
No. I have my newsletter feed and my RSS reader, so it's all here. So it's individuals and publications.
Okay. So the Feedly is the go-to app, right?
For sure. For core things, there are certain RSS feeds. For example, there's the BCD collector. They are not very public, but there are also RSS feeds that tell you when certain features, for example, enter the baseline. So every time then a new browser is released, I get in my RSS feed, for example, this now works across all browsers. So these are all a little bit hidden feeds. But if you're in browser technology, this helps a lot, right? Because you don't have to wait for people sharing that something is now working cross browsers, because you can treat the source. Okay.
There was one tool that you built, right? Browsers.
This is just for me. Yeah, that is true. Because when you go to Browsers FYI, also I have other tools where I display the current browser versions, right? This only shows you where's Safari now, where's Chrome now, where's Firefox now.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's a handy tool. I use it once a month, right? And I also have other tools that shows our current browsers are here and like that. And this is then based on the MDN data. Because all the MDN data is actually just a huge JSON file, which is nice to parse.
Okay. Does this tool have a lot of visitors? Because I feel like...
I don't know. I don't think so. But I do think that some people... So I don't have analytics on there because I don't mind. But I do think that some people use this to get just the latest browser information in there. Because I built this because I was looking for an API to get the current Chrome version, right? This is why I built this. And I think some people use it for that, which is great. It's just a static site deployed on Netlify. I don't care what people do with it.
Okay. It's a beautiful tool actually to get to know about the latest version.
Yeah, I mean, yep. Happy you like it.
Okay, so that was the end of all the rounds. I have one final question. So if you could leave the viewers on one idea, what would that be?
Be curious. I think that was the theme of the show.
Be curious. All right. Thanks, Stefan. I had fun talking to you. Where can people find you? I have also made a slide, so let me quickly jump to that.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. So I'm not on the Twitters anymore because of its owner, but I'm on Mastodon, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. My website always works, and yeah, Web Weekly is webweekly.email.
Okay, I'll also include this in the show notes. Okay, Stefan, thank you once again for taking time to be on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. That was fun.
Awesome. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe on any platform that you're listening to, and also on YouTube.